All right. Well, I think we will start. We have a nice group here, and like I said, I think we'll have some others joining as we go. But we want to make sure we're respectful of your time and able to get to the things that we'd hope to get to tonight. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled to have such a wonderful sized group tonight. This is our second virtual event, our second webinar sponsored by or facilitated by the Indigenous Science Knowledge Rig through NARST, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But this is connecting to science knowledge through Indigenous storytelling from around the world. And as I mentioned, this is our second in a series, but you don't have to have attended our first one to get a lot out of this one. We are just continuing on with some of the work that we've been doing. And so we're thrilled to have you all, and we will let you know about our next one as soon as we have a date. But with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. And next slide, please. So just because we have some new faces, and I just want to make sure everyone is sort of situated to who we are and what we aim to do. We are the Indigenous Science Knowledge Research Interest Group that is affiliated with NARST, with National Association for Research and Science Teaching. And research interest groups are groups that are dedicated to NARST members' specific interests and commitments. And as you all know, our group is really committed, and our huge membership in the ISK RIG, which is, oh my goodness, it is exceeding 150 members at this point. Our RIG is really dedicated and committed to supporting research with Indigenous knowledge systems and really integrating knowledge systems globally and reducing hierarchies within knowledge systems. We really aim to share research that's happening within and with Indigenous communities to explore Indigenous research methodologies and strategies for collaborative and community-based research. We aim to highlight best practices for working with Indigenous communities, to increase awareness of the contributions of Indigenous knowledge systems to science education and research specifically, and really to amplify the voices of Indigenous researchers and educators. So much of what we really work to achieve is that the voices of our Indigenous partners, community members, elders are the ones that are being amplified in the spaces that we're working within. So we just wanted to provide that background so you sort of knew who we were and how we were coming to this space with you all tonight. Next slide, please. And so we just want to take a minute to introduce ourselves for those of you who may not have met us before, who again are new to working with all of us. We have a leadership team. I'm Julie Robinson. I'm from the University of North Dakota, and I'm the chair of the ISK RIG. This is my second year in this role, and it has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my professional career. I am absolutely so lucky and thrilled and grateful that I get to be a part of this incredible group of people. And I'm going to go ahead and let the co-chair introduce herself.
Yeah, hi. Aloha, everyone. My name is Stacy Potez. I'm from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. This is my first year as the co-chair. I'm just happy to run alongside Julie as the chair and learn everything that I can, but happy to be with you all here today.
Hi there, I'm Dmitry Smirnov, calling in from Minnesota Makoche, or Minnesota. I'm a PhD candidate in biology education at the University of Minnesota and just completed my first year as communications officer. Great to see you're all here.
Unfortunately, our treasurer, Paichi Patshine from National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan, is not able to be here with us tonight, but we're super grateful to have her work as treasurer for our RIG as well. And I will also say that we have this year we were just so grateful to have two new roles within the RIG, members at large, and they are here just being incredible supports and again learning about the RIG to enable greater sustainability and capacity for the work that we do. So Nikki Klebeck from Florida International University is not able to be here with us tonight. But I'll let our other member at large introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jada Miller, and I am currently on Patwin Homelands in Davis, California. And yes, I have been a member at large for the ISK RIG now for a year, and it's been amazing. And thank you all again for attending tonight. We are really excited to have you all here with us.
Thanks to everyone. Next slide, please. So, just a quick recap of our last session, just so everyone's sort of caught up on what we did before. We were focused on looking at how science knowledge is conveyed through story and how we really reframe what it means to learn about the world around us. So, learning through story as a way to learn with, learn from, and learn in reciprocity with the natural world, rather than looking at us as humans learning about the things around us, but we're learning in reciprocity and learning from the world around us. And also learning the language of the place that we're in, that the place recognizes the language that is native to it, and that the stories convey that language and that connection to place as well. We heard incredible examples of science concepts that are transmitted through stories from around the world. Science concepts such as energy transfer, biomimicry, wayfinding, human survival. And these stories came from our wonderful Indigenous community members from Taiwan, from Turtle Island, North America, from Hawaii, and from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And we started to talk about the importance of recognizing stories as intellectual property of Indigenous peoples and communities, that they are not just out there for the taking, but they actually are the intellectual property, and we need to recognize considerations around data sovereignty when we're thinking about story and the use of story. And that's something that we're going to continue to talk about tonight. So that's sort of the next step of where we're headed. Next slide. And so when we left, we asked the participants to share some reflections, wonderings, next steps, things they'd like to continue to grapple with as we held future webinars. And these were some of the things that participants shared. So thinking about, common topics and phenomena, our connection to science-based phenomena across global stories, how we can focus on things like sustainability and foodways through use of story, through stories. How we can think about the use of storytelling within our research projects, how story can become a part of the methodology and the way that we engage with the research that we're doing. And then these two are where we're really kind of going to focus our attention tonight, is how we use stories as pedagogy. So not just the stories themselves, but how storytelling and story becomes part of how we convey information, knowledge, ideas, how we learn, how we teach, as well as how we find and use stories in ethical and responsible ways. And so those will be some of the themes that we talk about tonight. All right. And with that, we're turning it over to Stacy.
Yeah, so here's a quick overview of what we'll go through this session, kind of loosely. We'll start with teaching from elders, and then we'll move into storytelling as an essential understanding, focusing on story and data sovereignty and probably ethical considerations as well with that. And we'll do some reflection and discussion. And some of the session goals and objectives for tonight, some of the things that we hope that you will take away from this session is that you'll explore the role of story and storytelling to support learning and how guiding documents and frameworks from Indigenous communities can situate storytelling. We hope you'll understand the diversity of story structures. Consider storytelling as pedagogy within science education or in STEM education as well, and to describe respectful, responsible ways to include these stories and the voices of elders within science education to really have representation from them and considering their stories as sacred. So as you move through this session, here are some prompting questions that we'd like you to kind of ponder, think through as we talk about story. But what role did story have in your life? Think back on your life and stories that you held and hold on to today that have meaning for you. What stories did you hear over and over growing up? Maybe this might have been from elders or grandparents that you were surrounded with. And in what ways do you learn about your family's traditions, values, or lessons about what you do and what not to do?
Okay, thank you, Stacy. And so we're going to begin with hearing from some voices of the voice of an elder. This is Dolores Taken Alive, and she is an elder from Standing Rock Sioux Nation, which spans the boundary of the North and South Dakota region. And I'll show you a map of the region in a little bit. So I'm going to talk a lot more about, or I'll share a lot more about, I won't do as much talking, about teachings of our elders in the Wool Lakota Project and where these videos, these resources are coming from in just a little bit. But I wanted to start with, we wanted to start with this video so you could hear from the voice of Dolores how storytelling and oral tradition play a role in her life, in her upbringing, in her community. So we'll go ahead and play that, and we'll enjoy Dolores's knowledge and sharing about story from her perspective. Ooh,
Oh, I don't think we can hear.
yeah, it seems like the
I thought that if I unmuted myself and I played it, that you all would be able to hear. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's because I have my earbuds in. That's probably
Ah,
it. 1 second.
And Jada, there's also an option to share sound when we share via
share
Zoom.
screen.
There is.
So
Where is that? Can you hear me okay? Where is that at?
we can hear you. You might have to reshare to get the menu pop-up option. And
Okay. You know what? I think it might be quicker if someone else wants to
ah,
share
and
from
I
this
can go
slide.
ahead and share. I have it pulled up right now. So if you
Okay, I'm
want
going to
to
stop
stop
sharing.
share, I can
Sorry
absolutely do
about that.
that. No, don't be sorry at all. I'm just going to move things around on my screen a little bit here.
That is very, like say, you read a story. The stories have values. The Lakota stories have values. There's something that you're gonna, the moral of that story. But if you read it, it's not, it's just, you read it and it's gone. But if somebody come to our classrooms and talk about the stories and the moral of that, what did you get out of it? What was so important? That's why I believe in oral storytelling. That's because I was always asked to do this at the Sundance Youth Camp. And I try to, tell stories that there's morals to it because that's the way these stories were. And long, long time ago, how our stories have come even when you go out hunting, or even to make a hide, scrape a hide, or to, beadwork and all that. There's always a moral to that story. And one that I like about that, he's no longer with us, Mr. White Hat, is how, one, um, was it a cousin that was so appreciative of her male cousin. So she started beating some moccasins for him for an appreciation for looking after her. And she said to him, Lena Oha. So what that male cousin understand was Oha means to cook something. So he went out and boiled the water and he put those real beautiful moccasins in her. Sometimes, they don't really get the moral of the story. And that was a joke that he told. And I thought, oh my gosh. So things like that, the oral stories, I really believe in that. That's why I always like to go to LNI, and just visit those, especially like Charles White Elk. Boy, I learned a lot from him, but he's no longer with us. But you know what he said to me, or in that um, room was, he said, I have been teaching Lakota language for over 40 years now, and I am just tired of it. And you know what? That spring he died. So I said, I'm not going to ever say that. I'm tired of teaching the Lakota language. I'm not going to ever say that. I said, after what happened to Charles. But he was really good, and he told stories in that room, where we were getting our training. So things like that, that I used to look towards Ogallala and Sichango, that there's a lot of elders that have really good stories. And that's where I look to Mr. Joe Marshall III too, in his books. It is really good stories in there. Some I know and some are new because, our grandparents, I used to say to my mother, Mom, can I go sleep at Grandpa's tonight? Okay, then we used to sleep on the floor. And Grandpa would, before we go to sleep, he would be telling us stories, and he was a storyteller. So that's where, I used to go just to hear those stories. But, of course, you have to have permission from your parents, and they don't allow us to sleep anyplace else but to our grandparents. So, this oral tradition is very important. Coming from somebody with a life experience and sitting there telling you or talking about, like to the youth group, that is very important.
I'm going to stop share there and let Jada go ahead and reshare. And so one of the things that I just wanted to explain about my access to the video, or the how this video is able to be shared in this way. So um, about in the 20 teens, 2015, 2017, in there, there was a really intentional initiative across the region of North, South Dakota, Minnesota, and Montana in different projects and different initiatives, but all sort of connected to the same idea of um, how to integrate the voices of elders, the essential understandings of the tribal nations that were local to those regions, into education. So how to integrate indigenous knowledge systems within all classrooms across the region. And so um, this actual video comes from something called the Wolakota Project, but there's others that I'll share with you a little later from Teachings of Our Elders, and these are just different regions, but similar aim to the project. And the goal was to create frameworks for essential understandings that were common across the tribal nations of the region, that could situate and provide a guide for all teachers, for all students in the regions, with the understanding and the assumption that all students benefit when multiple knowledge systems are integrated meaningfully and thoughtfully. And so these different projects were done between the Departments of Public Instruction and elders from the Indigenous communities of the region. And these were co-created, collaborative, shared initiatives. And part of that were these guiding frameworks that outline the essential understandings of those regional tribal nations, as well as repositories of stories and interviews with elders from the different tribal nations, with things that they wanted to share with all classrooms in that area. So there's sort of the North Dakota-ish version, the South Dakota, but of course we know that these are spanning not span they're spanning political boundaries. They're not bound to state boundaries, but done in conjunction with public instruction, so that all students would benefit from this meaningful integration of Indigenous knowledge and sort of more mainstream education. So these videos are publicly available on these sites. They are intended for educational use, for use like we're using them tonight, and to really center the voices of elders in transmitting the knowledge and the stories and the interviews to a broader context. And so that's how these come to you. And we're going to share those a little bit later on, so that you can see. And again, these are resources, frameworks, and videos that would not make, they're regional, they're local to those tribal nations within those communities. So it wouldn't necessarily be something you would pick up and use that video in a different region. But it's just a really nice example of how this work can happen, and how we can use these build these relationships, and use those relationships in a way that's really showing how we can center and honor the voices of the communities themselves to increase and enhance learning and understanding and reciprocity with all students and learners and teachers. So that's how we are sharing these with you tonight, is because this is their intended purpose. And that can be a part of the tricky thing, I think, is knowing how do we access stories? How do we find stories that we can ethically use? And here's one way is to have this type of shared project, but also, find these that are intended for, wider dissemination for broader use. So next slide, please. And so this is just showing you the region that these projects happened in. So you'll see these are the tribal affiliations of all of the elders and community members that are connected to these various projects. So they're sort of represented here. So what you're going to do next is have a chance to explore these frameworks. And so I'll just tell you very quickly before I turn it over to Dimitri to give you the directions for what you're going to do. You're actually going to get a chance to access 3 different frameworks. And again, these are the North Dakota Native American Essential Understandings, the Oceti-Sakowee Essential Understandings, and the Essential Understandings regarding Montana Indians. These are 3 different frameworks developed as part of 3 different projects, but all with the intention that they are for educational use, for shared learning opportunities, and to enhance educational outcomes for everybody. And so one of those essential understandings across all of these different frameworks, which represent a multitude of tribal nations and cultural communities, is storytelling. So you'll see from the North Dakota, there's learning and storytelling. From the Oceti-Sakowee, the oral tradition and story. And from the Montana, there's 3 and 6 are the essential understandings that are both focused on oral history and storytelling. So you'll see that this is something that is enacted and described and purposeful in different ways across these different frameworks that were created to really highlight and amplify these essential understandings across these different regions. And so with that, I will stop and turn it over to Dimitri.
Great. Thank you, Julie. So I have the pleasure of walking you through a learning and reflection exercise. And we're going to start by sharing some links in the chat, which I'm about to drop, which will take you to each of these essential understanding documents. And what we'd like you to do is to choose one, and it could be one that you choose randomly, or perhaps there's one that speaks to you because of the geography that you're connected to, either where you are or where you've been or where you will be. And we invite you to take 5 minutes, I'll let you know when the timer starts, to browse through this document. And you don't have enough time to get a complete understanding. It's an opportunity for you to be exposed, to see what kind of information is included. And then after spending 5 minutes on that, we're going to ask you to engage in a reflection exercise where you have a chance to share in writing something that excited you, made you curious, perhaps challenged you or you found difficult to wrap your mind around. So as you look through the document, keep that in mind. The links are in the chat. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and I'll let you be.
And I'll just add one quick thing, which we're sharing the full documents with you. So there's other essential understandings in each one of these. But for the purposes of this, you can just go to the ones that are indicated that are more focused on storytelling.
Thanks,
But you
Julie.
have access to all.
All right, timer starts now. All right, that was our time. So if you could wrap up what you're reading, we're going to transition to an exercise where we're going to capture some of the ideas on sticky notes on a digital posted board, so to speak. And we're going to then have a chance to express our own thoughts and then see what others have been sitting with. And we want to really engage with this idea of what are the essential understandings teaching us about the role of storytelling and learning, and how can we begin to incorporate that into our practice as educators and instructors. And what we're going to do is use the digital sticky note board. I'm dropping the link in the chat. And Jada, I think I want to share my screen so I can show folks how to navigate it. Thank you. And so it'll look like this, where just imagine a big whiteboard with these three questions that we'd like you to engage with. What was something exciting or interesting that popped up for you as you were reviewing the document? What was something challenging or difficult for you? After all, storytelling may not be something that we're used to in the practice of science education. And we want to create a space for you to express what you might be grappling with as you engage with this concept. And then what made you curious? And we want, none of us has all the answers, and some of you might have questions that we can't answer tonight, but we'd like to create space for that curiosity. And this will also inform us as organizers what we might bring to future webinars. So tactically, you can grab a sticky note, you can either drag it or you can copy and paste one and then drag it, select the text, and then type in your thought, and then continue on with the rest. And you'll see a flurry of activity in here. We'll try to make sure that there's space for everyone. And I invite you to spend about 5 minutes sharing your reflections. You can also change the size of the sticky notes if you have a lot to say. And then as you wind down with your share, we invite you to take a look. Is there anything else that others have written that you relate to, that resonates with you? Is there anything that you have questions about? Or is there anything that you wrote that you might want to speak to more? Because we'll have a chance to be in group discussion around that. So I will set another timer for 5 minutes. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute if that's easier for you. I'll stop my share. Right. Feel free to keep typing, and if things come up for you, you can keep this window open in your browser and feel free to continue adding to it. You might also want to reference it for your own idea or somebody else's as we move into a larger group discussion, and I'll pass it off to my colleague Jada to lead us through that.
Okay, so now that you all have had a chance to sort of sit with what you are noticing, what you are thinking, what you are questioning, and like Dimitri said, what's challenging you, we'd like to sort of open it up to the group. If you would like to share anything out, maybe it's a question, comment, and we also have these sort of questions. I don't want to call them guiding questions because we definitely want to hear what you are thinking about too. But if one of these questions is also speaking to you and you'd like to sort of speak to this, to any of them, we would love to hear. So this is just a chance for just sort of a larger group discussion if you feel so inspired. I'm doing the teacher thing of like sitting in silence, holding space for silence. And that's okay too. If we just want to sort of sit with our thoughts here, that's totally fine as well.
I'm looking at a and oh, and Maria, I just am looking at your comment at the same time. So I have two things in my mind now. But yes, thank you so much. I'm going to actually, Maria, to your point, songs and poems as a form of story structure. And I think that that's something really I've been thinking a lot about lately is, so often in, Western classrooms, we learn that stories have this very specific structure. They have a beginning, they have a problem and rising action and falling action. And that's a very westernized look at what a story is and the structure of a story. And so I love that point. And even when we hear the stories that the elders share with us, they don't follow that pattern necessarily. And so how I I I think about that a lot and how we can incorporate um, different types of stories, different types of storytelling modalities, different structures of stories. That story can mean a lot of different things. And also how do we encourage our students to share their story? I think is another piece that I think about a lot. So I'm throwing that out as sort of an idea, and thank you, Maria, for bringing that up because that was something that I had in my mind as well. And just the other piece that I wanted to share, just or respond to, I guess, along those lines, there's this idea of stories as fiction I saw in one of the stickies, and that we can sometimes conflate story with not necessarily like true, or it's historical, or it's not, it's something that happened before. And how can we reframe stories to be multiple things can be true at once, and stories can convey current realities that are still ongoing. Indigenous stories aren't just things in the past, too, even though they may have been passed through oral tradition, they also reflect current realities. And so I think, just expanding our understanding of story in general is something that I think about a lot. So anyway, that was a lot of my airtime, and so I'm going to be quiet now. But I would love to, just hear from others too, and feel free to use the chat as well.
I'll just share a brief observation. I'm looking at these two post-it notes. I'll move them together. One says, how can educators avoid othering when addressing Indigenous worldviews? And the other is, how ethical is it to bring regional story to another state? Maybe more, the moral still applies. And when I read that, I think about the practice of asking for permission. And in getting permission, you also gain information about how to use it, where to use it, with whom to use it. And I also reflect on how, and this is something that I'm in continuous learning around, how different that is to the practice of a scientist that I've been socialized into, which is go discover and take the information. There's never an asking for permission. There's never the possibility of hearing a no and having to honor it. And that's been a really big change in how I approach knowledge and learning as a person, as an educator, as a researcher. Um,
I can add a thought real quick. I really appreciated in one of the resources you all shared about how bringing stories is another way to bring like an alternative perspective or to history, like what the textbook might say, or just like what is dominant in the classroom. And I work with a fifth grade teacher right now, and we've been trying to bring in Indigenous knowledge systems through like learning in places. Um, but what she was doing before we kind of joined forces was she was kind of bringing in like different Indigenous authored books into the classroom, and also just kind of like bringing different stories about like the other story of Thanksgiving, right? And so she gives students like the dominant story of Thanksgiving and then like a different perspective. And I think that's really cool to just like when you think of like, onto epistemic heterogeneity and just bringing in just having students know that this is one way, this is one idea, this is one story, but there's all these others as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think just that I love the idea of, I think, yes, Indigenous authored books are such and often too, there's such incredible Indigenous illustrators too that are sharing, really beautiful and powerful artwork. So I think that's a really wonderful way, again, to share story that has been made publicly available in that way. Yeah.
I can jump in. I don't know if you can hear me. This is Lama. First, thank you so much. This has been really beautiful. This is my second time attending these webinars, and thanks to NARST for creating this space. I was reflecting on a recent exchange I've had with a physicist. So I'll start by saying I'm situated in the School of Teacher Education. I work at Florida State University. And this physicist reached out to me in the effort of trying to collaborate. And part of what he's grappling with in his practice is how can he support his students to move away from or to distinguish the like narrative versus evidence. So we've had these interesting conversation about where that is coming from. But I find myself reflecting on what is my role in the School of Teacher Education, working with future teachers and also potentially reaching out to scientists to kind of stretch this notion of what counts as science and what do you think becomes important in terms of thinking of teacher training to think deeply and critically and ethically about how we bring in stories into the science classroom, both K-12 and higher ed, in ways that do justice and not harm and does not reproduce, right, deficit narratives or potentially misrepresent. So the question of ethics, but also in terms of the kinds of training needed before we just go ahead and say, let's expand how we teach and let's bring in stories. What kind of preparation, awareness, the professional development need to happen? And how can we, what are some baby steps that we can start exploring within our different contexts? Thank you.
Thanks, Dama, for sharing. I'll just jump in real quick. I just kind of really like the conversation about what you kind of all have been talking about, but really just I think it's so beautiful because with these Indigenous stories, we are as a collective too, we're in this research, education, academia space, but at the same time, from these stories, it's kind of an unlearning or an undoing, a reframing of how we think about what counts, who gets to decide, right? And in what ways can we ethically bring it into the classroom? So I think your responses are kind of all in that same kind of category of like, we're learning alongside this. This is what we thought science was, but maybe we should have a different perspective or consider these alternate perspectives. So yeah, thank you. And we do have some from the chat from Sarah. It was interesting to me how the document notes that stories may provide different narratives of the same event. Indigenous narratives often conflict with history books. Yes. And attention I experience in science teaching is honoring and amplifying different narratives and perspectives while also helping supporting students in navigating a media environment with so much misinformation, perspectives that may not be helpful. Yes.
I can't help but speak to that just as a double clicking on that and sharing that I have experienced that feeling too. And this is where I can be vulnerable and share that I don't have the answers. And if put on the spot, I wouldn't be able to provide something cohesive. But my reflection is that I've in another society that I'm a part of, I've facilitated discussions where I've asked the question, what does it mean for us to explore multiple ways of knowing in an environment where there's so much skepticism of science? And I think that one of the things that I know that I'm fearful of, and others are, is that if we say that people associate multiple ways of knowing with a term that philosophers use called relativism. Basically, anything goes. You have a truth, I have a truth, everybody has a truth, and there's no sort of distinguishing that. And that's how we get into a lot of situations that we're in right now in a society that's not scientifically literate. But something that I've had to remind myself is that multiple ways of knowing and indigenous ways of knowing is not equivalent to relativism, and it's not equivalent to a pseudoscience that we are afraid of, opening up to. I also, a reflection I would share from a fellow educator is that I think a lot of the pushback against mainstream science has come from people who have had skepticism and curiosities who have been shut down because there's been a lack of epistemic humility within mainstream science. And so I invite us all into sort of this uncomfortable space of exploring some of these topics as we both seek truth and also seek multiple perspectives.
That was a wonderful discussion. I wonder if everyone's feeling good, if we should move on. Okay, thank you.
Can I quickly say something?
Oh, please. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, when I saw the topic on storytelling, and I realized I did a research some time ago on the dilemma issue test, on the dilemma issue situations, and of instead of presenting some chemistry concept to the students, the experimental group were given their concepts in stories, and the students were so excited at the beginning just to start with a story. Oh, this person, and then from the story, they were able to start thinking what next is going to come up, asking questions on the stories. So we find out that even storytelling actually brings inquiry minds and shifts people away from the deductive approach to the inquiry mind, to them wanting to apply certain things. So that I found out in that research. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. That's
Mhm,
such
mhm,
wonderful sharing. And I think that
mhm.
it's a great point that, it's there, the stories allow students to engage their curiosity, to
Yeah,
ask questions, and that's really that's deeper learning for everybody, for all
yeah,
students. And
yeah.
so and then that gets to that idea of storytelling as pedagogy. And
Mhm.
it's not just about what the story is conveying, it's about how it's increasing learning and increasing engagement with learning. So I really appreciate your comment. Thank you so much. Well, I can't believe I knew this would happen, but somehow we're getting short on time. And I'm just so grateful to all of you for your sharing and your thoughtfulness and your reflections, both in the post-its, but in the discussion as well. So thank you so much again. But it seems like it would be really, we would miss a huge opportunity not to hear from this wonderful elder from Spirit Lake Nation. And someone I've actually had the incredible honor to work with, Oliver Gord. He is just an amazing storyteller and someone who really, um, again, takes every opportunity to engage with educational spaces and with learning and bringing story into learning spaces. So we're going to share another short video from Teachings of Our Elders with Oliver. And this is Iktomi's prediction. So Iktomi is a Lakota Dakota. Um, he is a spider trickster that is in a variety of stories. And he is this supernatural being that gets in trouble a lot. He's very mischievous. He's very, very cunning and wise, but very mischievous and kind of always looks foolish. And what ends up, the outcome of the stories is that many of them are teaching how to be honest, how to care for respect for your environment and your community. And so I think one of the takeaways about some of these stories too is that perhaps there's like a sort of a moral or a teaching that's within it, but how that connects to the natural world, connects to stewardship and citizenship. There's so many ways of thinking about how our, just our awareness of ourselves in the world is contributing to a deeper understanding of sustainability and stewardship for our land and our place. And so this is just another example of one of the videos that has been made available for educational and learning opportunity use. So. Jada, I think we're ready to share. It's about 4 minutes
Long
long.
time ago, when Makantanka was making everything, he made the people, he made the Ktomini, and Ktomini, Makantanka made him like that. He's teach the people what not to do. So that's how he is. There's a lot of stories, thousands of stories, hundreds maybe. But anyway, one time Ktomini, the people kind of getting mad at him. They want to kick him out of the village. It was a long time ago. So they told Ktomini, you play too many tricks, you leave. He said, leave it, go. He said. So I told him, leave the tribe. So before he left. He said, well, I want to tell you something before I leave, he said. In the future, he said, your children are going to cry because they're going to lose the language. And those people said, nah, that'll never happen. We'll never lose our language. We're always going to have our language. So, well, if you look back now today, we're almost in the process of it, losing the language. So Kdomini was telling him not to let that happen, in his own way, what not to do. And said, well, in the future, you're going to forget all your customs and traditions. Oh, no. People say, we'll never forget that. They told Kdomini, we'll never forget that. So, but now I say, a lot of young people, they don't know customs and traditions like that the elders do, And they don't seem to want to listen to the elders anymore. Some do, that's good. But, so he was kind of prophesying in the future. And so he told the elders, says, one day, he said, there's going to be an eagle landing on the moon. They all looked up to, no, the eagle can't fly that high. If you look now in the news, they said there was this rocket landed on the moon. He said, the eagle has landed. Remember that? The eagle has landed. So Kdomini was telling them, And so, anyway, he said, one day, he said, there's going to be a web that's going to cover the whole earth. No, a little spider can't do that. Put a web all over it. No, go, Kdomini. You're full of it. But so now, if you look around, there's a web around the earth called the internet, the World Wide Web. so, in that way. But just kind of thinking in the future. But anyway, I guess things like he kind of told the people, but they didn't believe him. But I have a lot of Kdomini stories, and the kids like to hear those things like that, and other people have more. Yeah, he teaches people what not to do, in his own way, So he was always getting in trouble because they knew he was like that, but still they believe him. Anyway, he gets people in trouble, or it kind of makes them think.
Yeah, sorry. I was just kind of processing that. That was really beautiful. And I saw in one of the documents humor too. So I like how he kind of included that in that video. But yeah, so as we're going through this session, we really could see how stories are just so valuable and hold so much deep generational knowledge and is very, very important. But at the same time, like you guys have put inside the post-it note sides as well, there are some considerations or things for us to take, um, as we navigate including stories in the classroom. But right, like there's 6 items here, but obviously like there could be more considerations, but here's just some to kind of think through. Stories and oral histories are the intellectual property of their tribal nation. Number 2, use stories made accessible for educational use and that are in the public domain, like the ones shared today. Number 3, further confirm they are still intended for this use and have been developed in equal collaboration with Indigenous partners. Number 4, if possible, use the voices of elders, community members to share the story and credit the knowledge bearer and the tribal affiliation. For example, a good way would be to insert videos like this here, like we did today. Number 5, use the stories to convey the knowledge that was intended. And 6, avoid using terms like myth when referring to Indigenous knowledge conveyed through stories, and recognize that they don't just represent past, but current and ongoing realities and knowledge as well.
Thank you, Stacy. And I'm not going to spend any time with this because we are at our time, but I did put in the chat the links to both of these project sites that you are most welcome to browse, and you're going to find more than you can possibly, even think about all at once. There are hundreds of videos and there's professional development resources if you want to take some time. Some of them could be used across contexts. They are sort of about thinking about culturally responsive approaches and things like that. So these are available to you to use or to browse and to think through and to explore. So please enjoy and do also I just want to reiterate that both of these projects were designed in really close and reciprocal collaboration with the communities that are represented here. I think we can keep moving through, Jada, because we are out of time. And oh, and thank you again so much. Jada, can you just go back? Oh yeah, that was the one. Just as we wrap up really quickly, we just want to make sure that if you're not already on our list, please email me, and we'll get you on our email list so that you hear more about our next webinars and other things we have going on. Also, there is a link there for donations. We use donations to the RIG to fund Indigenous scholars and speakers and things like that. It goes directly to community members that we would like to support and include in our future, symposia and webinars and things like that. And any last thoughts from anyone on the team? I'm sorry, I sort of grabbed the end there because we were out of time. But I just want to thank everyone again for being here. It was wonderful. You're all wonderful contributors, and this was just a fabulous opportunity to spend time with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you so much for being here. And we'll let you know about the next one.
Thank you so much. Really, I put it in the chat, but I really do hope that you consider bringing such sessions in the 2027 conference in Boston, and go through the regular kind of pathway we have through the proposals, but also work together to create possibilities of special sessions that will be so important for our centennial conference.
Thank you so much. We absolutely will. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time zone you're in, everyone. Thank you.